OG Lee in the house once again, once again, once again. Thank goodness. Thank goodness. I was going to give a new tip today, but I wanted to just follow up on a stock recommendation that I gave. That was Vector Group, if you remember, VGR. And I wanted to comment just because there's been some news, I guess, highlights, and I wanted to just give an example of how news affects stocks. I'm giving you this example talking about how news affects stocks when in fact nothing material has happened within the company, right? So, as I said, Vector Group, we uh, we recommended that. And again, I'm not a financial anything. I told you you don't need to be all that. It's the information is free. It's just out there for anyone to look at. So we talked about Vector Group, and on Friday, if you looked at Vector Group went up by about 15 to 17%. And to show you what I'm talking about in terms of just being ignorant to most things in terms of the market, I don't know what index it is that Vector just got added to. That's the news. Some company came out of one of the, I think, S&P indexes, and S&P is Standard and Poor's, and they're basically an information hub. But you can go look at that and Poor's, Standard and Poor's. But anyway, um, an index is basically just that, and the index usually involves corporations that are listed on the stock exchange. Different sectors go in to make up an index, just like the Dow Jones Industrial Average type of a thing, right? Different companies from different sectors go in to make up that index. And so the Vector Group, they were added to one of the, I believe, S&P indexes. And so the stock reacted to that positively and boom, went up, I think 15 to 17%, as I said. And I think today, Monday, it's up again another 5% or something like that. So within the span of 2 days, the stock has went up 20%. Nothing material has changed about the company. It's just that this company, Vector Group, was added to an index. And so that was the news that propelled it up 20%. And also, since the time that I recommended VGR, you should be ready to also receive a dividend payment. Now, one of the things that can make a company uh, make its stock move when it gets added to an index is this. Sometimes mutual funds um, they buy from certain indexes just automatically in terms of their periodic investing. And so some people think that when you add a company to an index, especially an important index, that the institutional buying will occur periodically with that stock and make that company's buying pattern go up and make it, in the eyes of the beholders, more valuable. Okay? So that means that in a nutshell, if Vector gets added to this index, now more institutional buying will be directed at Vector because it's a part of this index. So that makes a stock go up. Now, what you're going to see is a capitulation after the news wears off because there's nothing happening exciting about Vector right now, right? Except that. So you're going to see this run up, and then normally what you're going to see is what? Somebody's money goes up quickly by 20%, 25%. They start doing what? Selling. And it makes it, as I say, capitulate some. And that's the time you want to go back to buying in that because I still think that Vector is a good buy. And this is the thing. even with you seeing the price appreciation, of course, the dividend yield goes down. But if you look at the dividend yield, it's still very good relative to other dividend bearing instruments, right? So this is something that I just wanted to talk about real briefly because I wanted you to see the dynamics of news. See, nothing happened within the company. The company's business, no, we are not talking about any kind of earnings or anything like that that are material. All you're talking about is it being added to an index, which could indirectly be material because there may be more institutional buying. It's still interesting, and you still see that it gave it somewhat of a pop. It'd be interesting too for you to follow to see how the capitulation happens after the news basically wears off, right? So what you may see though is because I think when I recommended it, it might have been at 9 and change or something like that. And so now I think it's maybe 11-ish, 12 or something like that. So what you may see, and you see it a lot of times in these kind of stable, basically companies, not a lot of, a whole lot of turbulence, not a whole lot of what you would call of volatility, right? So they sometimes will get to a certain point, right? Boom, that's that jump, and it stays there in that 11 and 12 right there, for another 6 months or something like that, just going up and down a little bit, sideways and what have you, just because it's not a very um, volatile stock that has a lot of news with it, that has a lot of trading within it. So this is just something that happened that I'm showing you does get a bump from news. And again, then it'll go back, pull back, and just be that normal stock again, giving you that nice yield until something else happens, and you'll see another gradual. And after a while, you'll look around, and I promise you this happens. You'll look around in about a year or so and say, wow, I didn't even notice it. But wow, it's up to, 12, it's up to 15, $17. I didn't even before you, it happens that way because it's a company that is trading. And so without even knowing anything about the stock market, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, it goes down. If you're looking for dividend yield, then you get it when it's down as best you possibly can to get the best yield, obviously. Because I'm telling you, if no one teaches you nothing else, I'm telling you now, if no one teaches you nothing else in the field of finance, it is the magical idea of compounding interest. If you don't understand that, you ain't gonna go nowhere. You haven't touched the beginning. So if you don't understand or begin to understand that the power is in whatever it is that's compounding, you missed the boat, right? So anyway, we talked about VGR. We talked about a little bit of what happens when positive news hits the market. And by the way, the same thing happens with negative news. And this is something that you invite because this is what usually happens on negative news. For instance, the exact opposite could happen. See, if you go look at the company that they replaced, its stock usually will go down when it gets pulled out of an index. But yet this could be a very well performing company. Go look at that. And what happens is the exact opposite. Within that day or two, you might see a 20% pullback. Because after the news cycle ends, a lot of times that stock, provided that it wasn't some real bad news, again, like they went bankrupt or just something they lost a very important part of their team, like a very well seasoned CEO or something like that. If it's not material news, a lot of times that thing is going to creep back up. And it may not be literally within the next 2 days or something like that. It may take it 2 months to get back where it was. But the bottom line is, if it's a good company, and you're going to look at it and say, oh, this could be a good long-term investment, get into that company and you'll see it start rising. If it meets all of the criteria for an investment within your portfolio, it may not. Sometimes that bad news or what we perceive as bad news can be used to your advantage. But anyway, I hope that you looked at VGR initially and that you reacted. I think we called the bottom. And so I'm sure that you haven't had sleepless nights from this investment. And again, now You're getting real close to getting a dividend payment. And so what you want to do in terms of the compounding is you want to take that dividend payment and buy more stock into the company. And this is where your compounding becomes magical. Because another one thing you got to look at, the shares that you're buying in each time, it's your money technically because they paid you in a dividend, but it isn't your money. Your money is still the initial investment that you made, and they rewarded you with that money. You buy more, you buy more. That's the magic. Don't sleep on. So VGR, good investment. Glad you did it. This is OG Lee. I'll see you again soon.